It's time for the Bringing Back Basic Gray collab, and so I thought today we would make some cards from scrap items together. Hi guys, it's Beth. Welcome. Today is the collaboration, the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration. It's a small collaboration I'm doing with my friend Sarah over at Crafting and Relaxing here on YouTube and Kathy over at Stampin' Cat on Instagram. And each month we just pull out some old Basic Gray paper from our hoarded stash of Basic Gray and play with it. So a couple months ago, I played with my Basic Gray scraps. I made some embellishments, just punched die cut, and then I also had used up a lot of the strips because I always save the branding strips from the paper, and then I had some other strips that I'd saved, and I had just made these card mats out of those. So figured I'd use those today, and then I'm going to use some of these bigger scraps. Someone had asked me to show how I made my little gift card pocket from the last sheet load that I made. So I'm not going to give you the dimensions and all of the exact specifications for the pieces that I'm using for the sheet load, but I will include Call Me Crafty Owl's link in the description box below for her latest sheet load video so that you can see how you can find the June 2022 sheet load sketch. But I will show you how I added my pocket and some of the other modifications that I had made. But I think first we're going to start with these scrap pieces. I'm going to go ahead and add the card mats onto card bases. So I'm using A2 size card bases, so they're 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and these strip pieces are about 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, so there's just a little bit of a white border around them. And again, how I put these together is I just applied adhesive to my a piece of white cardstock. I just covered the whole piece with adhesive and then started laying down the strips in a diagonal fashion on there. So this is just a great way to use up strip scraps that you have. So then I have already pre-die cut some white cardstock into a rounded corner rectangle with a little bit of a stitched detail. And I just thought this would help some of my floral and heart embellishments stand out. And I'm using the embellishments that I had made a few months ago as part of the Basic Gray collab where I was playing with scraps. So I did have one die cut word thanks there that I used, and for the other 3 I'm just going to use the sentiment thinking of you and just stamping it directly onto my white cardstock piece towards the bottom, and then just arrange the flowers kind of towards the top. So I'm gonna apply the white piece on this one and then kind of figure out the best location for the flower once I get my thank you word down. And I'm just using my Barely Arts glue for this. So now I'll add that pink layered flower kind of right in the center above the thanks, and then let that dry. And then we're doing the same thing for this one. And this was a strip flower that I made and just used a decorative edge scissors on the edge. And then this time I decided to bring in one of the hearts that I had. And it is getting time to refill my Barely Arts glue bottle because sometimes I'm having to really work to squeeze out of there. So this one I did use a little bit of a smaller rectangle. And now I want to go and add just a little bit more embellishment to each of these. So I'm going to figure out on this one if there's some small flowers that I can use to put on either side of the bigger flower. And get those arranged and put down. And then I had wanted to add a couple of smaller hearts kind of towards the bottom, overlapping that bigger orange heart. And so I kind of played with colors and which ones might work, and I decided to go with two of the more like red patterns. I wanted that brown pattern, but I didn't have any other ones. So once I get those figured out, and I had an idea in my head of what I wanted it to do, but ended up not doing that. And then once I got them down, I realized I didn't like that. And then I couldn't move one. So it was what it is, or it is what it is. But so for this one, I was trying to find something small to put around there. I really just wanted something that would kind of be like enamel dots. And I had some small dots that I had punched out from scraps before, but none of those quite worked. And I thought, well, maybe I can take one of those bigger pieces and punch a smaller circle out, but I didn't really like those either. So I decided to pull out a scrap of green. I just wanted like a solid green. So pulled out a strip that I had left and then punched out some of those small circles and then tried to figure out where I wanted to put them on the card. I did a lot of like fiddling with these cards. I don't know why. I cut a lot of that out. So even though you're still seeing a lot, there was a whole lot more. So now I'm going to go and add some of these other strip pieces that I have to the insides of the cards. It's just another great way to use up more scraps and just to add a little detail to the inside of your cards, make them a little more fun. And if I have a pretty straightforward sentiment on the front of the card, I generally don't add a sentiment or saying on the inside of the card. I just use it as space to write a message. So here, I really didn't like the way those hearts came out, and I know you're supposed to use the rule of threes, but I added a fourth heart and loved it so much more. So now I'll just add the strips onto these last two cards, and the strip cards will be done. So there's 4 cards done, and they used up scraps. So this is the June 2022 sheet load of cards sketch that I'm using. And again, I will link Alicia's video down below so you can find out how to download the newest sketch and get all of the cutting guide and all of that. So like I said, I'm not going to go into detail about the size of my pieces and all that because Alicia's sketch tells you. But I did go ahead and decorate this one just like I did in the cards that I did for my sheet load collab team. And I'm going to now go ahead and add this flat piece onto that larger back piece of the card. So it's like a double card fun fold. And then I added a little pocket off to the left hand side there on my original cards for a gift card. And so I'm just adding adhesive on 3 of the sides, and then it becomes a pocket, and you can slide a gift card or an extra note in there. And now I want to decorate up the front. So that's why I went with more of the solid pattern there on that front flap, because I wanted to add some more of those flowers and a sentiment. So I pulled out an old Happy Birthday sentiment set, I think from Close to My Heart. Picked it up at a garage sale. Pretty sure it's not an active set anymore. But I stamped it off twice here because the first time I was a little crooked, didn't like it. So I'm just going to trim that down. And this is the scrap piece that I cut off of the card base for this card. So following Alicia's cutting guide, you do trim off a little bit of the normal A2 size card base to get that shorter flap on the left. So I'm just adding my sentiment down and then finagling the flowers around that, just so the front of the card has enough going on that I think it looks good. In this one, at least I don't fiddle with it near as much as I did the first round of cards that I did. So there's my completed card. And I did decide that I wanted to use up some more of the embellishments that I made, so I just added one little flower there on the inside. And that one's done. So now I'm going to do another card, a different like version of this card, and I think it was Chelsea Christensen, who's also on the collab team, who had the idea of just using, instead of trimming off that extra piece, just folding it over and using that as the pocket. So I decided to go ahead and try that version as well. And so the rest of the card goes together like the exact same way, just adding all of my pieces down. And I believe the card sketch calls for 3 different pattern papers. I just used 2, and essentially I just used one piece of paper, but they had an A and B side, and so I used both sides. And mainly because I didn't have a ton of paper left that really, I didn't have any, I was trying to use the scraps and I didn't have a ton that like coordinated really well. So I just decided to stick with the A and B sides because I know those would work together. So on this inside flap here, on the last one, I put like a full 3x4 piece. This time I didn't have enough of this paper left, and so I'm just kind of piecing together some of the scraps. And so now that that's done, I can go ahead and add this flap to the inside of the card there. And then I wanted to add something on that pocket, but again, I was limited on the scraps that I had left, and so I just decided to use that smaller strip instead of covering more of that pocket. So now on the front, I wanted to add another birthday sentiment, and these stamps usually stamp really well, but since I was adding it directly to the front of my card, I wanted to make sure it was like nice and inked up and that I was going to stamp right. So I did stamp it several times here just to make sure. And then even when I did go and stamp it on the card, the right hand side didn't stamp well, so I had to bring in a black fine tip marker and kind of fix that up a little bit, but at least I didn't have to fix that much. So after I get that stamped, I realized I wanted to add a little bit more of a pop of color. Like I wanted to bring out some of that red that was on that little bird there at the bottom. So there I am fiddling with those. I had punched out some teeny tiny hearts, and this is when I had made the embellishments a few months ago. So they're like a dark pink, but I feel like they worked and they bring out that pop of color that I wanted. So this one is done on the front, but again, I decided I wanted to use up some more of those embellishments. So there was a green bird on that right hand piece there, kind of like a light green bird, and so I brought in 2 hearts that had light green on it, and then another heart that's that like kind of aqua checkered pattern there. And now this card is done. So 2 different ways to make the pocket card, and then a bunch of strip scrap cards. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Please check out Kathy and Sarah's links below, and I hope you all have a very crafty day.